Welcome back to the Two Crazy Ketos podcast.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Joe.
And we are Two Crazy Ketos.
It's been a while.
It has been a long time. I'm looking around our surroundings right now, and this does not look like our living room studio in Coconut Creek.
Well, they can't see it because this is just a podcast. So we're going to bring our podcast back. I'm super excited about this. I think our last podcast was about a year and a half, maybe even 2 years ago. But life got in the way.
Well, in a fantastic way. You know, life changes. We keto with it, right? Which is awesome. But we have 2 grandchildren now. We now have 2 out of our 3 children married. We have a child who's graduated from college. We sold our family home, moved to the country, and now we live on 6.5 acres. We are remodeling a house, and we are currently raising chicken and turkey.
The end. Let's do a little rewind. Let's talk about how we got here. So if you are new to us, again, my name is Joe.
And I'm Rachel.
And we're the Two Crazy Ketos. And we started a YouTube channel back in 2018, kind of as a joke. It was really a way for us to do something together because we knew we were going to be empty nesters soon. And I had lost a whole bunch of weight on keto and reversed a bunch of health conditions. Rachel did the same. We started it, didn't think anything of it. And by 2019, we were doing more and more videos. And then somewhere in 2021, we made this our full-time job. But we have been unapologetically keto since 2017.
Well, and I'm thankful for the YouTube channel as you're talking about how it was kind of part of our marriage. It was a marriage counseling opportunity because we had only ever been married with children. We'd only ever dated with children. And so we were like, we better have something that's just you and me. Otherwise, what are we going to do when we're an empty nest? And here we are, Joe. We are an empty nest. I mean, it's pretty full of chickens and turkeys right now, but the kids are grown. And now it's just me and you. And I'm really thankful that we do still have each other.
So now that you say all that, as you're saying it, it's making me realize keto saved our life in more than one way.
It really did.
It saved our life as far as our health, because I truly believed that I would be dead before 50. It saved me, got me out of a wheelchair. It saved your mom's life. I truly believe that it saved your mom's life, because not to sound morbid, but I believe if it wasn't for keto, your mom probably would not be here anymore. She had just recently, we'd lost your dad, and she had a bunch of metabolic health issues, and now she's just thriving and kicking out there, going to theme parks with the grandchildren. I mean, she looks amazing. But like you said, I think it saved our marriage. We had a good marriage, but again, as our kids were getting older and getting ready to move out, where would we be without Two Crazy Ketos? And so I think keto helped our health, but then because of keto, we started a YouTube channel, which helped us have a better relationship and now put us on a farm.
Well, it's funny because I think about my menopause journey. Think about that, Joe. Like, it would have been you and me and perimenopause.
That's not good.
It would not have been good. I mean, I can remember years ago when, my mental health specialists were letting us know, like, Rachel's going to have to be on antipsychotics and she's going to be crazy. She's going to go through menopause and she's going to be a danger to you and everybody around her. And thanks to keto, I got through menopause and I'm on the other side of it. I still feel fantastic.
Right.
I feel great. I wasn't in need of medication to go through that process. And we really didn't even realize how thorough through menopause I was until we were on the other side of it.
So let's talk about some of the changes that have happened. Let's start off, before we even get into the changes in our personal life, let's talk about some of the changes in the keto and carnivore space, because there's been a lot.
Sometimes I wake up and I look at my feed on YouTube or Instagram or X, and I think, I don't even recognize this place. And it's not always a great feeling. Sometimes it's good. You're happy for somebody who has a new win, and they achieved it in some different way than when we would celebrate wins 8 years ago, right? But sometimes it just seems like there's all of these camps. It's almost like Game of Thrones, and they're so closer connected than they realize, and yet they're living in camps that are trying to war with each other for who sits on the throne of best.
You want me to be honest? I mourn for the good old days.
Yeah.
I mourn for 2019. Heck, I mourn for 2020. A good friend of ours, Jonathan Shane, the Keto Road, recently, wrote to us and said something about, the changes. We met Jonathan in 2019, back when we were a giant community. There wasn't really a community of keto. Like, that was our whole mission, was to create a community where everybody can kind of do life together. But there was a camaraderie within the keto space, that you went to KetoCon in 2019 in Austin, Texas, and it's like everybody was excited to see each other. It didn't matter if you did clean keto, dirty keto, lazy keto. It didn't matter if you did total carbs, net carbs. Everybody was just happy that we were not eating the standard American diet, and that we were taking back our health. And somehow, after 2020, it's like that really continued to build during 2020, during the Lord Voldemort years, right? You saw people coming closer together. But somehow when we came out of the Lord Voldemort years, the community split. And now you've got like the carnivore community and the keto community, and then you've got the lion diet community, and now we've got a new one in the GLP-1 community, and it's like everybody's infighting.
Don't forget the carb cycling community.
The carb cycling community.
Or the carb heavy community. That's like, I'm still here, but I also want to tell you why I regret doing keto and carnivore.
It truly is the Game of Thrones.
It really is. And, everybody's kind of like fighting for that stupid Iron Throne. And to be honest, I want to be like the dragon in the end that just burns it down, because nobody should even want to sit on that throne. It's not helpful. Like you said, 2018, 2019, I can remember a time when, there were some people who exercised more than others, right? They were ripped in a certain way. There were some people who were more chiseled than others. There were some people who were eating more carbs or less carbs, and people talking about different, stages of metabolic flexibility. But I never felt like there was no room at the table unless you were doing everything in step.
Well, we've been blessed being in this community and being, I hate the term, but an influencer in the community. We've been blessed to meet a lot of people.
Right.
Who are also like influencers or doctors or professionals. And I think about over the years going to the different conferences, there were a lot of people from different sects that we would get to speak with and hang out with. And I can remember going to barbecues afterwards, and probably the one that really just like always comes up in my mind is we were in Omaha, and we went to a house that Robert Sykes, Keto Savage, had rented, and you had us there, and you had people like the folks from Keto Chow, and you had Dr. Barry and Dr. Baker and Dr. Boz, and then you had some like elitist athletes. Everybody did things differently, but there we all were sitting on the floor, talking, explaining things, showing like pros. Like it was like a day of what's the highlight of your week? What did you notice most? What did you like least? Where do you think that you could improve things? But nobody was yelling, my way is better. It was everybody getting along, comparing notes on how we can help to improve each other or ourselves. And I feel like if you had that today, if you had that same setting today, it would be like going into the Hunger Games. Right. And who's going to win at the end?
It's funny because, as you're talking, I mean, obviously we're Christians. We're not ashamed of that. We share the fact that, faith is everything for us, right? It's foundational. But as you're talking, I'm thinking, yeah, those early years were like the Acts church, like getting started and everybody just wanting to like make the circle bigger. Make there more room at the table, right? Because we're so excited that, we had found this fat fueled lifestyle, like a way to fuel our bodies without carbohydrates, or like where carbohydrates was the focus. And so we're like, man, we're fat fueled people. And we found a commonness there, a sameness, and we wanted to protect it. We wanted it to be like when we were together, it was a time of festivity. It was a time of reunion and family. Like that's where you started hearing like the keto fam, that was just, it was just a big table that was continuing to enlarge. And now I feel like we're looking at some different denominations that maybe Paul later on is having to go back and revisit and kind of challenge that you guys have gotten like settled into your way is the only way, and it's really not helping the cause, and it's really causing more strife than is necessary, and it's really contrary to why we started this thing in the first place.
Yeah, and these are all future videos and future podcasts. We want to talk about some of these different changes, but that's been a big change. Also, there's no real conferences anymore. A lot of the conferences have gone away, and I think that the conferences have gone away because of that split, right?
Yeah.
Because of
who do you invite?
With split within the community, like you even see it with what was the largest keto conference in KetoCon. That the KetoCon does not exist anymore.
They now call you,
since our last podcast,
Hack Your Health.
KetoCon has now become Hack Your Health since our last podcast.
Is part of that, I have to ask, is part of that reasoning like, hey, keto is...
Did they see the writing on the wall?
Is keto's like a, that's a tricky subject if you're not going to call it carnivore fast.
Because if you call it KetoCon, then the carnivores don't come. I mean, heck, you and I have talked about, should we change our name? Because we fall more in the primal way of eating. Like Dr. Berry, like I love him, but sometimes I can't stand the fact that he came up with what I think is the perfect term for what we eat in the proper human diet.
He never has to pivot.
Because that's what we believe. We believe that if you're eating keto, you're eating the proper human diet. If you're eating carnivore, you're eating the proper human diet. If you're eating a mix of what Nisha calls ketovore, heck, if you're eating the Mediterranean diet, you're eating the proper human diet. And so for us, being there in the middle has always been this great thing. But now we've talked about changing our name because if we want to support everybody, whether you're keto, carnivore, Mediterranean, paleo, who cares? Well, a carnivore doesn't even want to have anything to do with us because some carnivores, not all carnivores, but some of them think they're better than us and that they've moved past us.
Well, it's interesting. Before, keto used to kind of just represent a fat-fueled person. So whether you were paleo or low carb or, keto or carnivore, like everybody was under that umbrella.
Different levels of keto.
But it reminds me, man, I have to go back to church stuff and like, maybe we need to think about this if I have to go describe it in church ways. But I remember in the 90s, there were so many scandals of the 80s of like, different like mega churches that were like had some sort of like falling out of some sort, moral failing. And so I can remember in the 90s, a bunch of churches being like, we don't want to call it church anymore because church is like a really toxic word. It's got all these bad connotations now. And so we need to turn it into like worship center. And I wonder when we've gone back and forth about like possible rebranding, does that just confuse people more?
We're not going to, we've talked about it, but we decided we are the two crazy ketos. And if you don't like the fact that we use the term keto, I don't know what to tell you. You don't know our heart.
But it's more about being fat fueled than being like
the fat fueled ketos, the two fat fuel people. That doesn't sound good.
Well, I mean, here our message is like we're part of the fat fueled community. So if you are running on ketones, right? Like if you are carnivore, you are low carb, you're here. Like this is exactly it. You may have less or more carbs on your plate than we do, but like, should we have identical plates, Joe?
Well, not to upset the dogmatic carnivore, but carnivores are keto.
Right.
They don't want to hear that, but they are.
You're fat fueled.
Because the definition of like the keto lifestyle is fueling your body with ketones, converting fat to ketones, fueling your body with fat. And a carnivore is doing that. They're just a stricter form of keto. I want to go back to your church thing, because the bottom line is God designed the church. Man came up with denominations, right? There's only one church. God created that church. Jesus created that church. Man created all these different denominations, which basically all came from, I don't like this rule, so I'm going to go start my own. And we're seeing that in the keto and carnivore lifestyle, right? You had everybody in one back in 2018, 2019 and earlier, and now everybody's got these different denominations of the proper human diet. I'm keto, I'm ketovore, I'm carnivore, I'm lion diet, I'm carnivore and don't even believe in salt. I mean, you see all of these different ones, but maybe this is a good thing, because one thing that you are starting to see in the Christian area is the emergence of the non-denominational church. Well, where we focus on Jesus and his word. And so maybe we'll come back full circle in the keto and carnivore space, where we've got this big rift, and maybe we'll come back to everybody being, you know what, we're all part of the proper human diet.
Well, I think that it's very hard to live in extremes. It's really hard. It's a hard thing to steward a bunch of anger. It's a hard thing to steward perfectionism, where you're like, there is, only one way and we have to do everything like in perfect step. That's a very heavy burden to carry. And in order for you to be the person that should be able to sit on the Game of Thrones, right, you've got to be the most cutthroat, right? Like, and that feels hard, right, to do. That you have to be the most angry, the most divisive, right? You have to yell the loudest all the time in order for you to always be on guard, right? And so I think that in anything, it's too hard to live in the extremes. And I think that after a while, people find that the moderate middle is really the place where most people live.
So those have been the changes in the keto and carnivore space, in Dr. Berry's proper human diet space. Let's talk about our changes in our personal life and how we got here. So 2020 opened up our eyes to one thing, and that is keto and carnivore is not sustainable.
It's not, because the first thing that goes when there's any type of stress on food, whether it is a hurricane that makes stress on food, or there is an egg shortage, or there is something like a Lord Voldemort year, the first thing that leaves the grocery store is what we eat, which is the fresh things, the things that are on the outer aisles. We always told people, try to shop around the outer aisles. You should require a sweater of sorts in order to shop for your groceries. If you are living in the prepackaged food section, that's not going to be the best food for you. So you want to shop the outer aisles, but hey, when there's a hurricane or there's a Lord Voldemort year, that goes off the shelf. Now what? Because, as we've said, our better health is completely linked to our nutrition. So even if it's just for 6 months, you just got to go back to canned soup and you've got to go back to Franken food, that's not really an option for us, Joe.
Yeah. I was thinking, as I said, what we learned in 2020 is that keto and carnivore is not sustainable. You probably just also heard a whole bunch of people hitting unsubscribe and typing keyboard warriors going, you have no idea what you're talking about. But bear with us, because exactly what you're talking about is where we're really going, is that, yes, all of that stuff leaves the shelf. And not just by people buying it, because it's also what gets thrown out. Right. And then if in our case where you have a hurricane, how do you take care of it? Right. If you're required to have refrigeration and freezers because everything you eat is meat, and now all of a sudden you're going to be 2 or 3 weeks without electricity, it's no longer sustainable. Right. And so you have this whole idea of you have to worry about that. Then you have to worry about the food supply itself, which we did with 2020. And we have to be honest, 2020 could have been worse. As bad as 2020 was, it could have been worse. What if they would have just shut down the grocery stores? What if they just completely got shut down? You know, we just recently saw this even with the government shutdown and people not being able to get SNAP benefits. What if you were reliant on that and you were a keto or a carnivore person and now you can't buy meat? What do? Like, and so that is where our eyes really opened up and we started going, we need to make this lifestyle sustainable for us, not just in the fact that we are okay only eating meat, but where are we going to get our meat from?
Because I think we had done as much as we could possibly do living in a very suburban area with like a 0 lot line. We had bought things so that, you know, when we had groceries, we could make our own beef jerky. We could make our own like dehydrated food and also freeze dry food, so that we were doing as much as we could to be in charge of the sustainability for times of, you know, lack and less than, because it will happen in life, obviously. Also, we had started a little backyard flock of chickens, so they were helping to produce some eggs that felt like it was enough for me and you to get by with.
Barely. I mean, we were allowed to have 2 chickens. I think at one point we had 8.
We had 8.
And we got 4 to 5 eggs on average a day, which is enough for a half a meal for one of us. So it helped. It made us realize that, like, wow, there's a huge difference in the quality of eggs you're getting from a backyard chicken, but it didn't make us sustainable.
And we thought, okay, where do you see yourself in 10 years? And we sort of did the math, and we shared this in our video presentation from the Low Carb Cruise, where we talked about like how sustainable is your lifestyle. But for us, what we had to do is sit down and actually do the math. If you and I are trying to get our groceries, you know, primarily from meat, like how much does that cost right now? And would we be able to stay keto, very meat-based keto, if the price goes up? Because some of our friends in Hawaii, once we visited Alaska, you would see meat prices be double or triple. And I thought, man, we will not be able to sustain this if it means that we've got to increase our budget 3 times larger.
Well, you're seeing this right now. So we saw it last year with eggs, right? We saw a major egg shortage because they had to euthanize a bunch of chickens because of, you know, the bird flu. And so we had that aspect, and where you saw eggs going up to $10, $12 a dozen, not in Hawaii, right? But here in the mainland, and where it literally, it was 50%, sometimes even less than 50%, more than 50% cheaper to go to a local farmer. And like, I can remember not too long ago where if you wanted pasture raised eggs from a local farmer, you were looking at $6 to $8 a dozen. But in the time of the egg shortage, you saw the $6 to $8 to $10 a dozen in the grocery store, and the local farmer selling them for $4 and $5, which is where we price our eggs at $4 to $5 a dozen for pasture raised, non-GMO, organically fed chicken eggs. But now you're seeing it in another aspect, because now we're having a beef crisis, right? Here in the United States right now, a lot of people aren't aware that beef, a lot of our beef gets imported from Mexico. Well, the cattle in Mexico have come down with a flesh-eating bacteria, so we've stopped importing beef from Mexico. And in a country where we eat a lot of beef, that's a problem, because it takes 2 years to go from calf to slaughter for cattle. Like, we don't have enough cattle right now in the United States alone to supply the demand. So you're seeing beef prices going up, and they're predicting beef being 20, not, you know, grass-fed, grass-finished, perfect, you know, panda massage beef. You're talking about grocery store feedlot beef. They're talking about it $20 a pound by next year. That's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for me anyway.
So when we started doing the math, we started planning for a move, and our middle son had said that he was interested in getting married, and our youngest son was graduating from college and was ready for a life on his own as well. And so we were like, okay, here's our chance. And so we were so blessed to be able to sell our home and then buy a piece of property with a sort of house, an homage to a house on the
Homage to a
property.
house. Well, it came up. We were participated in RV Unplugged season 2, which really opened us up to the whole solar thing. Because that's part of being self-sustainable as well, right? Not being as reliant on the grid. We're starting to sound like, doomsday people, but that's not really where we're going.
It's power moves.
2020 just really opened up our eyes. But when we went on RV Unplugged, we really learned about solar and learned how solar could really help us to enjoy RVing more, because it opened up to being able to not have to always be plugged in. And then we started looking at other things, because one of the reasons we wanted to do RV Unplugged was show people our keto lifestyle, but on like this stage of like inside of the camping community. And I know a lot of people discovered our keto channel because of that show. So it accomplished what we wanted to. But we ended up going up to Elkhart, Indiana. And I remember this is right when we were starting to talk about like, okay, now is the time. Now is the time. We've been for a couple of years saying one day we're going to move. And we're like, now is the time. Our son's going to get married. And I fell in love with Elkhart, Indiana. I went up there and I'm like, this is what I want. I want a small town with stuff to do within 30 minutes of anything. And that's what I discovered in Elkhart, Indiana, but it's too damn cold up there for me.
It's funny that every time we share that with someone from Elkhart, Indiana, they're like, why?
It's an amazing place.
It really is.
I love it up there.
It's amazing. So
we went on a quest to find that in Florida.
We did. And here's something that boggles the mind. We figured in Florida, there'd be so many counties that were open to raising livestock, and having a farm and having chickens and ducks and pigs and cows and all the things, especially if they had land for sale. But man, we found out that there were really only a handful of counties that even if you could buy land, they wanted you to put some animals on it.
We found a lot of rules and regulations in areas where even if you had 3-4 acres, they were telling you what you can and can't have on your land. And that was not what we wanted. So we spent like 3 months scouring Florida, and it had to be Florida because we're all about family and we didn't want to leave our children. And we also wanted to be within no more than 2 to 3 hours of our children. So it meant not going up to the Panhandle and those kind of areas. It meant staying kind of like Central Florida area. And we spent like 2 or 3 months scouring. And here was the funny part that, we found a couple of areas and we're like, well, this is a little too remote, or it's too much like the Wild West. I mean, I remember going on one property, we looked at a property and we're like, okay, this has got potential. We'd have to build. And there was like a 30-year-old tractor trailer that's been abandoned, like right on the property line. And you're like, whose is that? Like, it's like nobody cared about anything. And years ago, when you first even came up with this idea, like maybe one day we should move and have like land and a farm. And I said to you, we're never moving to Arcadia.
Never say never.
I said that, and people are like, wait, what? Isn't that where you live? Yes, that's where we live. I said we'll never move to Arcadia. Now, the reason Rachel would always say Arcadia is because her whole family is from the area. The reason I said we're never moving there had nothing to do with her family, because I love her family. It was that it seems like every single hurricane that ever hits the west coast of Florida goes through Arcadia.
Well, we're done with that now.
Yes,
because
we are.
We've moved here, so we're done with having hurricanes here. But yes,
2025, not one hurricane hit the United States. That's
praise
amazing,
God.
is it not?
What a blessing. So yes, I am a 7th generation Floridian, and many of those generations were started here in Arcadia. In fact, there's a church here that my great grandmother actually paid the mortgage off for, that just celebrated its 115th birthday. She was this little old widow woman, 7 kids, took on the church mortgage, washing clothes and taking care of people and taking care of children and just doing anything that she could, cleaning houses in order to pay off the church mortgage. But the church still stands, and there's a lot of deep roots here in this area. This is cattle country. It's also the citrus belt of Florida. My grandfather, before my mother's line went to the Fort Lauderdale area, which is where we were living when we moved back here, my grandfather was just looking to participate in construction because he was an orange picker. And you know, there's a very low ceiling in that particular, you know, line of work. And so that's why he went to Fort Lauderdale in the first place. It was to be a part of the construction boom, you know, in the 40s.
So we spent 2 or 3 months looking, and, you know, I knew what I wanted. You know, I wanted 2 or 3 usable acres. You were like, I want 5 or 6. And I'm like, the problem is every place we're looking, 5 or 6 acres meant 2 or 3 usable because a lot of it was swampland. And I was curious, though, because I was the one who came to you and said, this is where we're moving. What was it like? What kind of feeling did you go through in your head when I came to you? And I'll never forget, like, you were in the bathtub. And I walked into you in the bathtub and I said, we're moving to Arcadia. What went through your head when I said that to you?
Oh, happy day. No, I thought, don't tell my husband, you said never say never, because that's not nice. That's not good. That's not helpful to our marriage. And, you know, we prayed together as a husband and wife, and we prayed for God to lead us where he wanted to put us, right? Like, it's always God first. And so if he happened to fulfill an extra desire of my heart to be able to, like, go home to my roots, then that's just a blessing. And that's a love note from him that my husband gets to deliver. And so I'm thankful that you were okay with this. But you know what?
Because you hadn't even said, let's go to Arcadia. I mean, so well, I do think it was God, because it literally, I was just in the middle of the night, like, you're supposed to be looking in Arcadia.
Well, you were very emphatic that we're not going to Arcadia. And I just don't believe in being that spouse that just tries to fight about silly things. You know, maybe it's because we've already been divorced. And, you know, I'm so thankful for the marriage that we have, that if you feel really, really strongly that you don't want to live in a certain place, then I know that even if I want to live there, like, I need to respect what's important to you. And so for you, it was very important that you didn't live in Arcadia. So when you came to that conclusion, I was just thankful. I was really thankful that God had, you know, given us a clear decision. You know, sometimes a yes is the answer. Sometimes a no is the answer. And I have learned over the years to be thankful for a strong no as much as I'm thankful for a strong yes. So in this case, it was, yep, you're going to Arcadia. I was just thankful for the answer.
And if you're curious, what led me here was the fact that the more I looked at, you know, at different areas, because we're driving all over the place, and we did a lot of driving.
Yeah.
Right. Because we were doing it like all in one day, like drive 3 hours, look at a bunch of properties, drive back. And, you know, we just couldn't find anything. And the more I'm like looking at the map going, okay, so what is 2 to 3 hours from Fort Lauderdale, where 2 of our 3 children live and say they're never leaving? I'm going to again go never say never. Right. And what is going to be 2 hours from our other son and his wife and our grandchild at the time? Like, we've got to stay in a circle. And I'm like, it was like, you know, putting a thing and like drawing that circle with the line. And I'm like, okay, well, Arcadia, it's got what I want. It's a small town, but there's some stuff to do. Like, there's a Walmart 10 to 15 minutes from our house, and we're 30 minutes from major cities over on the West Coast in Southwest Florida. But we can still have our privacy. Now, here's the funny thing. I don't even know if you realize this. We ended up buying the very first property that we looked at in Arcadia. Now, we looked at other ones, but we ended up back at the first one.
Oh, I know. Isn't that always the way? Usually, you choose a wedding dress and it's like the first one that you pick, but you have to do your research and you have to, know that it's not just emotion, but it's the right choice. And I think about that in terms of even the way that we eat. We've done a lot of research over the years because this is our nutrition. This is our food. It fuels our lives. It's right and reasonable to invest your time in being informed about what's best for you. And it was the same thing for this. This is where we are going to live. So I think it's very important for us to do our research. And even if you like something because it's visually cool on the outside, don't just say, yeah, I'm just going to run with that. I think that you have to do your research and still go through that process of eliminating some other possible answers.
Well, let's wrap it up a little bit with talk about what we ended up doing. So we came here, we drove around a little bit. We found a couple of houses that we wanted to look at. We called the realtor for here. We actually got the broker, right? She met us out here. They were very smart. She showed us the property first.
Yes.
And then the house.
Because
you fell in love with the land.
Fell in love with the land, having like a pond. I mean, we could see the future.
We saw the potential.
We saw the potential.
Then we saw the house.
And then we were like, oh my gosh.
And I remember I didn't know how to tell Rachel this because it was interesting. We're walking around with the owner of the house, and he was from here, good old boy. And I remember him being a little skittish with us because worrying that we're going to buy up this piece of property, which is from his wife's family, and we're going to turn it into a bunch of condos or something, that we're moving from the city. And there was a point where he walked us around and he's like, somewhere over here, I buried a horse.
Half buried a horse.
He's like, I don't remember exactly where, so be careful where you step. And I'm looking at your face and you're just like in bliss of walking through this property. It was overgrown, but I see on your face, this is what I want. Because you've always talked about, I want a fish camp. Not that we can have a fish camp on this piece of property, but I knew what you wanted, like mature oak trees and a pond that you can go fishing in. And I saw you seeing the grandchildren running around. And then we walk into the house and I'm like, how do I tell her no? Because I'm the one who is usually the person who can see past the flaw. And you're walking through this house going, it's not that bad.
Right.
It's not that bad.
I definitely had some rose-colored glasses on, but I'll tell you what was going through my mind was we wanted sustainable. And sustainable is stewardship. It is not just that it's going to be turnkey and it's going to be easy, but if we were going to get closer to our food source like we wanted to be, I knew that was going to be getting dirty. That was going to mean I was going to have to get stronger. Like the whole strength training that I knew that I needed to pursue. I knew that whatever we were doing, if we were moving, the bales of hay and stuff, I was going to have to be on the other end of that for you because it really would be just you and I. And I knew that this was going to be dirty and this was going to be sweaty and it was going to be a true labor of love. But I believed that we were going to achieve what we really desired, which was to be closer to the earth, like feel more in tune with things that, the further that we get from our food, it's not surprising that the further the imbalance is in peace, right? Yeah. You're indoors more and outdoors less. You're not getting the sun in, right? Because you're in this busy corporate life and we lived that. And we had some measure of success in the corporate life, but I knew I wanted something different. And so I think I just felt a joy in my heart that we had found our little piece of heaven.
And it took some prayer, and we thought about it, and we obviously we went and looked at other properties. And for those of you who may have not seen videos or on our other channels or photos, the house was trashed.
And it's still a work in progress.
It's still a work in progress, but not what it was, baby.
No.
I mean, but I remember walking around with the owner of the house going, it's not that bad. And I'm like, there's a giant hole in the wall over here. There's not a light that's on. And the shower head is literally hanging from a tube coming out of a broken wall. And he's sitting there telling us it's never had a leak. By the way, he lied. And he's telling us how this is just a small repair and he can fix it. And he really was trying to sell us. But we went and looked at other properties. And I remember one that we went and looked at, the land was okay. It didn't have a pond, but it had some trees. But the house made this look like a mansion. I don't know if you remember. At least that's how I remember. Maybe now in hindsight, not so much. But at the time, I remember looking at that other house going, this one needs less work. Or more work.
Well, if you're talking about the one where
the log cabin one,
the horse was able to come into the kitchen, that was a little bit too close.
Every window was broken. The toilet was in the middle of the house with no walls.
Right. Like it was everyone.
And a cat colony took it over. Do you remember that?
I love cats, but there were so many cats. There were roughly 30 feral cats inside the house, along with the horse, who, like I said, could just come into the kitchen.
And so we said no to that because here's the thing: is that we had an unrealistic price range. Because I remember even talking to the realtor and who was from the area, born and raised in the area, and I asked her how much the acres go for here, and she was like $30,000 to $40,000 an acre for pure land. And I'm like doing the math. I'm like, okay, 5 to 6 acres, 30. I'm like, yeah, like we can't afford a house. Like we're going to get the 6 acres, but
a tent.
But we don't have the money for the house because we don't believe in a mortgage. And so our budget was in the $300,000 range because we knew that's what we'd paid for our old house and we could at least get that. And then we looked at a couple of other properties that were in our price range. But what was the problem with them?
They were
they were brand new houses.
They were gorgeous, but they were on top of former citrus groves. And what we knew was that land was absolutely drenched with Monsanto. Like that had been heavily sprayed. Those crops I knew had been heavily sprayed. And so you're talking about this is the ground that our food is going to eat from, right? And this is probably what's going to be going into our well because a lot of them still have like wells.
We all have wells. And
so I thought, man, we can have the really hard fixer-upper project, or we can have a poisonous turnkey. Yeah. That's really what I thought.
Because when we say it was a former citrus grove, like when we looked at Google Earth trying to find the property,
there was no house there yet.
It was still a citrus grove. So I don't know how often they update Google Earth, but I would say probably within the last couple of years, it was still a citrus grove. So this wasn't like it was a citrus grove 20 years ago. This was a citrus grove in the last couple of years, and that's going to be a lot of chemicals. So we ended up buying this, but the problem is the house had to be gutted, 2 studs, and it's only the 2 of us.
You know what? We've had a good time making it our own. There's always an element of, yeah, it'd be nice if we had unlimited funds. This is how it would look, but we don't have unlimited funds, so this is how it's going to look. And being okay with that. And I think that has, really been in step with our entire keto journey because we do our best with the budget that we have for groceries. And I think that that's what we try to share with our audience. We are never going to pursue panda massage beef because we don't have the budget for that. It's not that, if we go out to some fancy restaurant once a year and you have something that's like an extra high quality cut of meat that we don't enjoy it, we do. But that's not every day. So we try to make like choices like not buying the citrus grove land because we feel like, okay, that's worth the investment it'll be blood, sweat, and tears, more blood, sweat, and tears. But I would rather put that hard work in than to make ourselves vulnerable to all of those chemicals. And at the same time, as we're renovating this house, we're putting as good quality as we can possibly afford, and we're letting go of the little ticky-tack things.
So the other day, since you're bringing this up with a comparison of keto and carnivore, the other day, your mother was here and she asked if you regret this and if you would do it again. And when I say do it again, I mean rebuilding the house. Would you have bought a different piece of property? And you said, no, I would not do this again. And I'm going to tell you, I would do it again in a heartbeat. That I don't regret this. It has been hard work, and we're a year in and we're not in the house. We're close, but not in the house yet. Now, in our defense of it taking a year, like I said, it's only the two of us. There's also been a lot of sidetracks, like purchasing an RV, having to drive up to Indiana to pick it up, going on the low-carb cruise, doing the 2KK cruise, our son getting married, the birth of a second grandchild. Like, there's been a lot that has happened. But the other thing is in the midst of rebuilding this house, and in typical Joe and Rachel fashion, we never only do one thing. So in the midst of building and rebuilding this house, we started a farm.
Right.
We started a farm. We could have easily just said, we're going to work on the house, and when the house is done, then we'll start a farm. But we really saw the writing on the wall with, we have to think future. And again, when you talk about cattle, it takes 2 years from calf to slaughter. Even with chickens, like it takes 24 to 30 weeks to get eggs from chickens. And if you want to have food, we needed to think ahead of time that we have food. And again, with all the rising meat prices right now, I'm glad that we have a freezer full of chicken and poultry that we've processed, that we have like 20 turkeys, that we have about 50 chickens on here, that worst case scenario, we have food. We're ready to go. We could slaughter what we have or dig into our freezer. But the other thing is that in the house is that when it's done, it's ours. And that we've designed it and built it the way we want. We know what is inside of that. And when you look at our keto journey, going through our journey and learning about our lifestyle and what food does to us, I think we're in a better place, that we're now able to tweak things with our diet by going, okay, I've learned that this affects my lifestyle. But you had to go through this journey to get where we are. We started off eating one form of keto, and then we got really, really, really strict, only eating meat. And now we've come back to, I feel best eating mostly meat, but a little bit of vegetables. We had to go through that instead of someone just telling me, this is what you need to do and don't worry about anything else.
So to go back, because it sounds like I really regret this purchase, I don't. When my mom is asking, would you do it again? And I say no. What I would have done differently, and here's where maybe a keto coach would help. I probably would have said, you know what? Let's just have this removed because there's been a lot of damage done. And let's just get something smaller, like a tiny house. I feel like, we're sitting in a studio that's pretty small, and I feel like 2 of these, I would have made peace with it being on our home. We found out living in the RV that we could live in a much smaller footprint than we previously thought we could. You're coming from a 3-2 or 4-2 house, and 4-2 house, and you're saying, hey, we're going to go to a manufactured home, and you're thinking, gosh, that's such a huge leap that I wouldn't be able to survive without so much stuff and places for my stuff.
I'm still not ready to give up my stuff.
And I think that I can live now with way more stuff. That, like you're saying, that took living through that journey to see that I can live a lot more minimalistically.
We definitely live more minimalistically.
But if I did have it to do over again, I would have probably done more research on getting a tiny house or some sort of a shell and building upon something where I didn't have to restructure the foundation anyway, because, it's been more than just taking it down to stud and starting over. We've taken it down to stud and found some of the studs needed replacing. So that's where I would have tweaked it a little bit. And that would be my encouragement to somebody that's maybe getting started on keto. If you're like, man, I really want to hit the ground running, I would go ahead and get a keto coach. And I'm going to recommend Joe or me as a keto coach, because we can see, a little bit further ahead than maybe somebody who's trying to renovate their life in lifetime, and maybe hopefully save them some extra steps.
Yeah, I've definitely it's still hard for me to go there. I mean, it would have been so easy to just tear it down and buy a new house. And I remember us thinking about that several times until we found out that it was going to cost us more than we were putting into this house. But the thing is that I've learned a lot about myself in this rebuild. I've learned that I'm a better problem solver than I thought I was.
That's good.
I've learned we can do hard things, and is hard of a job. And I know it has been hard, and it's been hard on you, and especially living in an RV and staring at a house. But I mean, every day it's a little bit better that we can we shower in the house now, and we cook in it. We don't sleep in it, but we do the other things. But like, I have to go back to the fact that I will be 55 in just a couple of weeks. And I thought I would be dead at 50.
Right.
And so in that year from 54 to 55, we've rebuilt a house with no help.
So hear that. If you are on your health journey, what a difference a year can make.
So it's proved to me, like the rebuilding of this house, I wouldn't give up one thing. I wouldn't even want to redo the mistakes that I've made, where as we've just encountered one after laying down a floor and going, we're ready to start moving furniture in, and go, oh crap, that door that we decided we weren't going to replace needs to be replaced, and now it swings the wrong way, right? Like, there have been some big mistakes that I've made. I wouldn't even give up those mistakes, because those mistakes have taught me to be stronger. Those mistakes have taught me to endure more. And in the end, they've brought me closer to you and closer to God, because you've been able to lift me up from that, like beating myself up going, why did we ever do this? And in the end, I know the foundation. It's like our food. Why are we raising our own food? Because I know what's in it.
Right.
Like, so even if we bought a new house and had it dropped on here, do you know what's in it? We're RVers. You don't know what's behind the wall.
Sure.
We know what's behind every single wall and every single stud of this house. And so it's been a learning process, but it's proved that we can do hard things.
Sure.
And that's what makes me really happy. And to know that we're going to be able to sit in this house and play with our grandchildren and tell that story that our grandparents told us, and that their grandparents told them of, when I was your age, I walked 10 miles uphill both ways in the snow.
It's going to be a hard sell.
In the Caribbean, right? But think about the fact that when our grandkids are older, we're going to be able to go, Oma and Opa built this house.
When they were old.
Right? We built this house. And I don't want a smaller house, because I still have hopes and I have visions of giant family reunions on this piece of property.
Well, it's awesome to be reunited once again with this podcast. And I hope that hearing us again, in this form of media is encouraging, because maybe if you had listened to our podcast before and then all of a sudden we go radio silent because life changes and you're like, man, what happened to them? Are you coming back? Well, here we are. We're back. And, there's seasons to life. And I'm thankful that, there's seasons when you can let go of something. And I'm thankful for seasons when you can pick back up something. And I'm really thankful that we have the privilege of spending time with you and sharing our story. Our story is not the only story, and it is not the best story. The best story for you is the one that you're writing right now, the one that you're living out, the choices that you're making. And I just hope that we can cheer you along the way.
So we're going to bring our podcast back. Now, if you aren't already subscribed to it, please make sure you subscribe to our podcast on any one of your favorite podcast platforms. You can also check out our other social media like our Instagram, our X, our Facebook group. We spend a lot of time in our private group on Mighty Networks. It is members.twocrazyketos.com, where you have a couple of options. We have a free group in there. We also have a paid group where you get some extra things like weekly coaching with Rachel, as well as some other little things. And then also don't forget about our YouTube channel. We have 3 of them now.
We do. We have Two Crazy Ketos, Two Crazy Campers with K's, and the Double K Farm.
Yeah, so make sure you go check out and subscribe to all those. Lots of positive things coming up in the Two Crazy Ketos life soon, in addition to everything else with all of our videos and the bringing back of our podcast. We also now, if you are new to us, do annual cruises for our community. So check that out on our website.
Join us.
twocrazyketos.com. So make sure you hit all the subscribe buttons for all those different links, and we will talk to you guys next time.
Bye.